Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Ballhawk. These are your Sky Pillar Stadium Articuno Division Power Rankings. These teams are ranked solely on subjective feeling from our two rankers. These have nothing to do with coach ability or skill level. These are purely based on the way that we feel about the teams and how we like them and the synergy between them and the way they stack up against one another. So, take these with a grain of salt. And from there, I'll introduce my co-hosts. Go ahead.
So I'm your Articuno Division mod, Sun.
And I'm your Articuno Division helper, LXP, also known as JSauce.
All right. So with that, I got my two co-hosts by my side. We'll jump in. Start things off at number 16. We've got Goblin. Goblin's team is a coach coming over from the Quarantine Draft League, and his team consists of Mega Scizor, Como-O, Sylveon, Darmanitan Galar, Azelf, Chandelure, Pangoro, Lantern, Braviary, Claydol, and Charjabug. Why don't you start us off, Alex?
Alright, so basically, I had him at 14. And, first off, let's start off with the strengths, alright? So he has a pretty good Fairy Dragon Steel core. And I feel like that's something that's almost essential to draft. And he did a good job there with Mega Scizor, Como-O, and Sylveon. Next, he has very good momentum with 4 Mons that can U-turn, 3 that can Baton Pass, 1 that can Parting Shot, and 2 that can Volt Switch. He has webs, which really support this team. Darm G, as always. Icicle Crash is going to hit something for a ton of damage. He has quite a lot of immunities. And he covers his quad weaknesses, specifically towards Mega Scizor and Como-O. Now, his weaknesses is Stealth Rock immensely damages this team. He has 4 Mons weak to Rock. With, 2 Defoggers? It forces Scizor to run Defog unless he wants to run Braviary with Defog, which would be a little odd. Or he could run Heavy Duty Boots. His Fire Water Grass core does it. Another pretty common core. He has a cheap Weber, which I've used Charjabug, and it's pretty good, but it's only there to set up rocks and Volt Switch out. It's actually relatively frail, I think. And it just gets outclassed, in my opinion. And little side note I had was, there's a lot of 2-trick ponies on this team. Like, Darmanitan Galar's either going to be Banded, Scarf, or, if you want to get cheesy with it, Sub-Belly Drum. Mega Scizor usually going to be, I don't know, I've seen it like knockoff U-turn Bullet Punch, or I've seen it Swords Dance. Como-O, usually going to be Klinger Souls or Dragon Dance, etc., etc. And that's all I have for me. Sun?
I think there's one thing this team cannot ever deal with, and it's bulky water. Mega Scizor, G-Darm, Channeler, you can't kill any water types. So when your breakers are struggling to kill water types, your team just falls apart. Your only thing that can touch it is basically Lantern right here, and it's not even offensive, right? Another thing this team is weak to, somehow, it's flying. This team has 2 flying resists. One flying resist.
It's got 1.
And it's a Lantern. So again, your only flying resist is a Lantern, and your only water, I guess, check is a Lantern as well. It's not looking good for. That's all I have to add.
Yeah, it definitely puts a lot of pressure on a pair of Mons, Lantern, and Braviary to either take care of water to some extent or get rid of hazards. Moving on to number 15, we've got Wobbuffet showing up, and his team consists of Celesteela, Mega Charizard X, Blastoise, Silvally, Zarude, Uxie, Hitmonlee, Jolteon, Ribombee, and Nidoqueen. Why don't you start us off again, Alex?
I don't know if the first thing I want to say is I don't know if the viewers can see the dock, but all of the mons on the moves to watch for are pretty much the same.
Yeah, they can
So
see the dock.
That just creates 4 move syndrome for about every mon that's on there. Other than that, his strengths are he has webs and it's a pretty decent setter in Ribombee. Good. Good removal. He has Silvally, which is always a plus. Can do everything and anything. I thought he had relatively good setup, and I thought it was an offense/balanced O, which seems to be like the meta right now. For his weaknesses, Bolt Beam just blasts like half of his team. Not half looking at statistically, but it still can cause trouble. Zarude, I've never liked that mon in draft. Like, I've played with it, and it's never been a success to me. He has... Okay, so... when I looked at this, I think I read it wrong, but... yeah, I put 2 hazard setters, but I left out the sticky web, so he has 3 hazard setters. And... yeah... so, just mark that off. He has 5 monotypes, which I've never been a big fan of a ton of monotypes on team. And no, his only wisher is Jolteon. And I really think to have a very successful team in draft, wish passing is a relatively big thing. Like, I think it's not mandatory, but it's very beneficial. Jolteon seems to be a bad Regieleki. Hitmonlee has to set off its own Unburden. And his only 3 real walls are Celesteela, Blastoise, which is, I wouldn't say debatable, but not as bulky as Steela or Uxie. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Sun?
In my opinion, this team cannot afford. So we don't have many good breakers here to actually, help Charizard sleep. Once again, we run into the issue of bulky waters. Nothing here really can break bulky waters, except for maybe Zarude and Jolteon. But even then, those 2 are very limited, but they're able to do. Another thing to look at is that, in my opinion, this team is really passive. You have Celesteela here, you have Uxie here, you have Blastoise, even Silvally. Half the times it's either defogging or more utility based. Ribombee, Nidoqueen, they might be getting up hazard, right? But there's not much to help really support a Zardex team as something that could kill water types, and that can help back it up, carry more threat. And that's about all I have.
Yeah, his bulky water checks are pretty frail, so I can definitely see what you're saying there. Easy to wear down and then just win with bulky waters. And to touch on Alex's point about wish passing, I agree. And it's mainly, I think it's a bigger point when your team doesn't really have a lot of immediate recovery moves like Roost, Recover, Soft Boiled, etc., which this team does lack. It's got a couple of Roosters, maybe 1 or 2, and Charizard, and that's just probably about it. But yeah, this team definitely lacks recovery and bulk and the ability to go the distance in battles. Moving on to number 14, we have SoFSM. Their team consists of Dragapult, Mega Gardevoir, Melmetal, Moltres, Alomomola, Landorus Therian, Muckalola, Audino, Virizion, and Graveler Alola. I'm gonna hand it to you first this time, Sun.
So immediate look, giant speed gap between Dragapult to Virizion. So 108 to 142, pretty big, especially considering a lot of fast mons are just going to outspeed everything. And their speed gap is between 65 to 90. See that there's there are going to be a lot of breakers in that range that are just going to run, adamant and modest. They don't need the extra speed. All right. Something else to know is that this team is very, very weak to dark types and ghost types. If you take Alola Muck out of the picture, most of these guys cannot handle any ghost type attacks or dark type. Right. But one thing that is good about this team is that offensively it's very powerful. You got Dragapult, Melmetal, Mega Gardevoir, crazy wall break. But nobody can resist like all three of these guys. Right. You got Lando T, you got Moltres providing U-turn support, Alomomola for Wish support, and Alola Muck, it's just really solid dark type that can pretty much glue this team together. Alex, go ahead.
All right. So, starting out with strengths, he is a godsend fire Fairy Dragon Steel Core. I have this in another league, and there's about nothing that can stop it. Like, it's untouchable, basically. He got round 6 Lando, which is always a W. It seems to be balanced O. He has a strong Firewire Grass Core as well. He has healers. He has a good blend of bulk and movement. So, Volt Switch is Graveler Alola though, which is meh. His weakness, I personally think one of his biggest weaknesses is hazards because of 3 mons that like to U-turn are, one of them's 4 times weak to rock, and the other 2 are taking neutral damage, not even resistant. His removal's kind of lacking, like big time lacking. Forces Lando T in bulk, kind of. I mean, not really, depending on what team you bring. You can bring, like, Scarf Rocks or Scarf Defog and, like, fake bulk. But, I think Lando here is the primary defogger, and your secondary defogger, which is Moltres, it's 4 times weak to rock. Knockoffs is the best move in the game, in my opinion, and, if you have a team this weak to knock off, I don't see you going, like, insane, because it's just everything has it now. Speed tier, it's a big gap, but overall, it's pretty slow. Out, like, after you get past Moltres, I don't think there's much diversity on a lot of his mons. His electric type is 1 point, and that's something I want to point out because I always believe in having a good electric type, since the only things that resist it are electric and grass. And, I mean, it has 1 immunity, which is ground, but it's a very powerful type. His main status, I want to point this out because I don't think anyone else would. His main status is poison, which a lot of teams are, but I think Dragapult gets Willow, which realistically you're probably not going to run weekly. Mega Gardevoir has T-Wave, but it's not bulky enough on a physical side to run that every week. Moltres gets Willow, but that would be about it. Yeah, I think that's all for me on this team. I can see us definitely being a mid team, like, and probably making a shallow playoffs run. But I can't see it making a deep playoffs run. Then again, take this with a grain of salt.
That's fair. There's a couple things that I'm seeing here that while I'm looking at the team that I'd like to point out is that you guys kind of touched on it a little bit, the defog ability of this team. Just making up words on this video. I don't like it as far as, with how weak this team is to just, I don't know, hazards in general, as you guys put it. Moltres being forced to run heavy duty boots and defog. I think that's going to be his primary defogger from week in and week out, because Landorus T, you want to be able to have more options from matchup to matchup and not be as predictable. With that said, he probably will run defog on Landorus from week to week. And then Alamomola and Audino just seem redundant to me. I get it. Audino is there to act as, to help shore up his ghost weakness and give him an immunity there, but it's the same thing as Alamomola, and if you're bringing Alamomola, I can't see you bringing Audino, so it just seems like a waste of a spot to me. And that's all that I really wanted to address. Moving on to number 13, we have Sub-Zero coming in hot with Mew, Infernape, Tangrowth, Clefable, Mega Aggron, Nidoking, Noivern, Mantine, Raichu, and Thievul. Take it away, Sun.
This team is very, very bulky. We got Mew, we got Tangrowth, Clef, Mega Aggron. Really difficult to break this team. They all cover each other's weaknesses to some extent, while also providing wish support. You got Tangrowth with Regenerator, Mew with Roost or Recover, or just Softball, any of them, right? You got good hazard game, Fernape, Mega Aggron, Clefable, Nidoking, and have Mute that can just do them all, right? Have somewhat decent hazard control. Noivern and Mantine can definitely do it, though not the most ideal picks. Mew can do it, but you really don't want to run defog on Mew. Another thing to add is that this team has very good countermeasures to opposing threats, right? We got Unaware Clef. We got Mew that can do anything. Mega Aggron can roar. So to break this team, it's probably going to be a lot harder than what most people expect. Alex, anything you want to
add? I can definitely see where you like this team so much. I think I kind of blackballed him, putting him at 15. But in my mind, I'll tell you why. Like, I'll start with the weaknesses here first, because that's why I noticed immediately. 2/3 of his removal is flying type. And again, I just want to point out on the moves to watch for, almost everything there is between Mew and Clefable. So, like, he's going to have to bring, if he wants that, he's going to have to bring pretty much bulk sets, in my opinion. I put common coverage just wins, but it depends what type, I guess. But I just think this team has more than one common weakness, and that was just something I couldn't get over when I was ranking it. Like, it was irking me. His electric type is Raichu, which is very mid. And this is something I'd like to point out. Volturn has a field day. Like, you mentioned the team being so bulky, but that just makes it a lot easier for Volturners, because you swap in something that tries to wall it, it Volturns out, and you got yourself in a pickle. And it just plays mind games sometimes. Now at strength, you got round 4 Clef, which I think's insane. He is set on hazards. He has pretty decent low tiers. Mew, nice defensive core. His Wish Pass is very good, and so is his Fairy Dragon Steel and Fire Water Grass. They're pretty amazing. for my side notes, I put Thievul is a literal Goodwill Liepard, for those who don't know. And I think that this team might have to use some free agent moves at some point. But that might be subjective. I think under right circumstances, this team could go far into the playoffs. But I think it'll just sit there being it can be really. I don't think this team's that predictable, in my opinion. That's all I have. Ballhawk.
Yeah, the thing that really stands out to this team is the sheer bulk of it, and it's definitely going to come down to some prediction base just because their momentum is kind of null outside of Mew, Clefable, Infernape, and Noivern, and Infernape and Noivern are pretty frail. You're going to want to use them to clean games up a bit. The way this team wins is definitely setting up its hazards, chipping around, maybe have a Rocky Helmet here or there. Excuse me. And then cleaning up late game with either Mew, Infernape, or Noivern, depending on the matchup. Solid Dragon Fairy Steel Core. I like it a lot, though. And moving on to number 12, we've got Magnus Mites. And did manage to get Blastoise in some shape or form this season, once again. And he's got... Well, you can't run Shell Smash on it, though. Unfortunate. He's got Rillaboom, Rotom Heat, Mega Blastoise, Cresselia, Blissey, Hawlucha, Deancey, Bronzong, Ditto, Zygarde 10, and Rampardos. Start us off, Alex.
Alright, so I just want to acknowledge him for somehow getting a form of Blastoise. For what? Is this the third season in a row?
Yeah, he inherited it first season, got it last season, now he's got it again.
Well, I'll just start off with the strength. He has Terrain Lucha. It's always a good thing. I've seen it been very effective in draft, where usually you'd see it on ladder, but I've seen it be effective in draft, so it doesn't worry me. Blissey Crest is very nice of core as a defensive core. He has a amazing Fire Water Grass core. Although I don't know if he needed Rotom Heat when he has Rillaboom's Terrain, but that's just me. I love Rotom Heat personally. You can't set up because Ditto's a thing. Like, you have to be scared of Ditto week in and week out. You have to take this team by sheer force, in my opinion. Yeah, Rilla might be the best cleaner I've seen on any team, just because of the support here. You can definitely chip it down, and Choice Band Grassy Glide just nuts on opponents. The rockers are there. There's no real common weakness. And for weaknesses, the main problem I have is knockoff goes dummy. Like, I'm talking about, it goes ham. There's nothing that wants to switch into knockoff except maybe Hawlucha to get the Unburden boost immediately. He has a mid to weak Fairy Dragon Steel Core. I think that stems from me not liking Zygarde 10 as your primary dragon type. But something about me just feels like it's U-turn prone. There's not a ton of momentum. Like, you have Greymons, but I usually don't see U-turn ran on Hawlucha, so more like 2. And he has 1 realistic defogger and 1 rapid spinner. So I thought that was kind of weird with Rotom Heat and others that don't really like chip damage. Mega Blastoise isn't as versatile as regular, both removers don't want to carry removal every week. Those being Mega Blastoise and Rotom Heat. And extremely prone to the best move ever, aka knockoff. And yeah, that's all I have. Sun.
I think this team is super weak to fighting. Right? Only resist here is Cresselia and Hawlucha. But if your Hawlucha is coming in early, most of the times it's gonna be doing nothing. Right? Your Hawlucha is your late game cleaner. It's not supposed to be coming in early game. Which is why, Lucha does not count as a fighting resist. So bring your fighting type that has access to knockoff, which a lot of fighting types do. You just go ham on this team. You either click knockoff or you click CCE, and you kill everything. Right? Another thing to know is that this team is grassy terrain, but 4 mons that are air, potentially. Right? Rotom Heat, Crest, Hawlucha, and potentially Bronzong. So they're not getting the full benefits of terrain. And even when Bronzong is running Heat Proof, you're still, risking a potential earthquake from the other side when it's not up. When most people play this team, probably high horsepower, right? This team has, as you mentioned, very, very poor removal options. You don't really want to run Rapid Spin on Blastoise, because you want to run like Flip Turn and Aura move. And Rotom Heat, you're probably limited to running Boots with default every single week. Unless you're playing Alex, of course. Yeah, that's all I have about this team.
Like the subtle jab. Yeah, that's all I got for it as well. I don't really have too much to add to it other than I like the Rillaboom Hawlucha. Everything else kind of seems like it didn't really, the synergy wasn't quite there with some of it. But with that, we will move on to number 11. And unfortunately, Alex had to drop off. So, hey, thanks for helping us out up to this point, Alex. And we'll just soldier on. But coming in at 11, we've got Vaxo, and Vaxo's team consists of Excadrill, Dracovish, Mandibuzz, Grimmsnarl, Heliolisk, Marowak, Alola, Reuniclus, Gigalith, Toxicroak, Sceptile, and Glaceon. You want to say a few words, Sun?
Yeah, unfortunately, Alex is not here to give praise about his team. I really don't like this team. So for starters, there's a huge speed gap between 80A and 109. That's really important. That's, in my opinion, the most important speed gap that you have to cover, which, it's not there. Another thing about this team is that it's very hard for it to break waters, bulky water, right? You got Dracovish, you got Excadrill, you got Alolan Marowak. Again, they can't kill waters. Only thing here that can do the job, Heliolisk and Sceptile, maybe Toxicroak, right? Everybody else kind of just struggles. Another thing to note is that the team is very weak to ground. You have only one flyer in Mandibuzz and one resist in Sceptile. Everybody else either weak or neutral to ground. So that's not all a good thing you want to have. Something else to know is that this team is somewhat of a sand team. You got a Gigalith, you got an Excadrill, potentially Dracovish with Sandrush, but stronger. Reuniclus, it's kind of good in sand, but again, it's not like real sand abuser. And Toxicroak, it feels really out of place, right? You got a fighting type that doesn't benefit from sand, doesn't really cover the other guy's weaknesses, and it just kind of, you're only really gonna bring that when you're not bringing sand, in my opinion, right? There's a mini Trick Room core here as well. You got Reuniclus and Alolan Marowak, so they can potentially put in some work. But other than that, this team is too busy. It tries to do too many things that it doesn't do any of them too well. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I like that last point you made there about it being busy. I agree with that one 100%. And the Toxic Croak thing, I think you hit right on the point. It seems a little redundant with Heliolisk. They seem kind of like the same thing, just their roles being flipped, one being specially oriented, the other being physical. The only thing is Heliolisk can absorb. I mean, it checks the water types much better than Toxic Croak. Toxic Croak really doesn't do anything back in return. So I think the main thing that this team does is it supports its sand very well with 2 strong breakers, and outside of that, it's very weak, and it puts a lot of pressure on Excadrill and Marowak Alola. So it's got a lot of common weaknesses, and I think it'd be easy to wear this team down throughout the course of a match. But the one thing is, you got to bring your bulky water types to handle the Dracovish. If you don't have a Dracovish answer, you're going to be in trouble, but most teams these days do. So with that, we'll move on to number 10. Coming in the top 10, I guess we're not even halfway, that doesn't mean too much here. We've got Austin. Austin's team has Mega Gallade, Togekiss, Kyurem, the Mon which we do not name, Landorus, Slowking, Torkoal, Venusaur, Dusknoir, Excelgor, and Murkrow. What do you got for us on
Now, you don't want to name that one. I think it's amazing here. It covers everything that Kyurem, Landorus, and Togekiss doesn't like. Right? Kyurem usually struggles. Corviknight, Skarmory, Celesteela. What does Magnezone do? It kills them. You can also kill, Scizor, Ferrothorn. Kyurem does not like any of them. Even Landorus Eye gets rid of all of the flying steel types. Helps cover the weaknesses that these Pokemon have. Togekiss, Kyurem, even Landorus doesn't appreciate a steel type attack. Right? Magnezone fits really well here. Another thing to know is it's so powerful. This whole team, you got Mega Gallade, Kyurem, and you got back there Landorus Eye with Chlorophyll Venusaur. These mons kill. They just kill things. There's no switch in. You have to, most of these guys. It's got a mini Suncore that could potentially put in work if given the right matchup. But again, those are mostly the positives. But another thing you want to look at this team is that defensively, this team has a lot of issues. Your Torkoal, Venusaur, those are part of your Suncore, right? So that means if you want to bring a defensive fire type, your Torkoal is probably coming with Sun. If you want to bring a defensive Venusaur, well, most of the time it's probably going to come with Chlorophyll. So if you don't bring those two, then you're going to be missing a lot of answers holding threat. Another thing I want to add is that the hazard game from this team is quite weak. Basically just Torkoal, Landorus with rocks, and then Excelgor with the spikes. Right? Nothing much. Landorus doesn't even want to run rocks that often. And Torkoal's only coming with Sun. Right? And then removal. Togekiss is good. Landorus is good. Torkoal's alright. I guess. Right? It's decent, but it could be better. Anything else you want to add, Baha?
Does Kyurem get Weather Ball? I'm
Yeah.
not sure if it does. Okay,
Yep.
So yeah, a lot of things got introduced to Weather Ball this generation. I think the Sun helps them out a lot in that regard. I agree that Torkoal is being asked to do a lot here, let's face it, it's probably going to be the primary hazard setter with rocks, just because Excelgor is probably not going to come too many times. And if it does, it's usually going to be pretty predictable in my opinion. And then Landorus, you're usually going to reserve that to be a cleaner or something to pivot around and pop things off. So you're not really going to have him running rocks too often. So yeah, I mean, I like the budget picks in Dusknoir, Excelgor, Murkrow. I just wish there were other things in the team that could set rocks or hazards reliably other than Excelgor and Torkoal. Yeah, I admit that Magnezone is pretty good on this team. He's got a solid trick room, a budget trick room in my opinion. I think Dusknoir could put in a lot of work under trick room, getting access to Poltergeist now, having a very strong physical move to accent its 100 attack. Can't sleep on that thing anymore. and then you got Mega Gallade to just pop things off at the end of the game. So yeah, it's very very offensive, borderline hyper offensive in my opinion, and he's gonna rely a lot on just keeping the pressure up, so to speak. Coming in at number 9, we've got Jake. Jake's team has Tornadus Therian, Tapu Koko, Scizor, Crocodile, Mega Swampert, Slurpuff, Haxorus, Thwackey, Pelipper, Duosion, and Weedle. What do you got, son?
Yeah, Weedle. Yeah. Don't you love when teams just slap like a random weather to it? Right? Earlier we got the sun, the random sun, just Venusaur, Orko. This one we got Pelipper, Mega Swampert, and we even have like a little Thwackey right there to add a little bit of terrain. But look at this team, just hyper offense. Everything's trying to kill you. Everything's trying to get in, click setup, go next. Tapu Koko, screen setter, right? Light screen reflect, you turn out, Scizor, setup. Mega Swampert, kill you. Right? Haxorus. You don't want to know how Haxorus can be. Right? But again, HO, it's all hit or miss. You're either gonna win your game like really badly, or you're probably gonna lose because you don't have the defensive power to with all the other guys' offensive threat. And one thing to know about this team is that it's got 2 water types, but none of them are resist ice. So this team is weak to ice, like very weak. On top of that, it's also weak to water. Right? Nothing here is taking a Scald. You switch Pelipper in, you increase the Scald's effectiveness, doing more damage than before. Right? Another thing, this team is weak to rock as well. Not just like stealth rock, but just rock type in general. Your resistance include Mega Swampert and Crocodile. Right? That's it. So you either kill your opponent or you're just gonna lose badly. Anything else you want to add?
Screens Coco is going to help this team out a lot, I think. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the dual weather. I don't understand why Thwackey was thrown out on this team. Maybe just cheap grass type that who knows. I don't like the way that it functions with Crocodile and Mega Swampert. Somebody pointed out to me, I think it was in the WPF Power Rankings, where we were looking at a rain team that I ranked very highly and totally disregarded the fact that when you're setting grassy terrain, there are a lot of mons that got Grassy Glide now, and so all it takes is for you to bring Grassy Terrain and your opponent to pack Grassy Glide on 1 or 2 mons, and your Mega Swampert and your Crocodile are immediately neutered. He's got a lot of really strong physical and special offense here. I just think that, well, not special offense, it's very physical oriented. Bulky Water with Rocky Helmet can do a lot of good things against this team, and I think it's just going to be, they're going to need to rely on hitting things hard and just being in a good position, knocking things out, lining them up and knocking them down. They're not going to be able to switch around or pivot around too much with this team. Coming in at number 8, halfway point, we've got Goomba. Goomba's squad has Tapu Fini, Mega Medicham, Ferrothorn, Slowking Galar, Lycanroc Dusk, Drapion, Talonflame, Hitmontop, Palossand, and Leafeon. What do you got?
So in my opinion, this team is very immobile. What I mean by that is that it doesn't have many pivoting options. Only one I can see is basically Talonflame, right? So everybody here, they're switching in and they're gonna sit, and they have to sit there, right? They don't really have a choice. So if if your opponent is predicting, then you're just being forced to switch every single time, and you're just losing momentum every turn. So if this team is behind, it could be very difficult for it to come back. And even when this team is ahead, you're gonna have to make some really good double predictions or double switches, or just good predictions to cover your opponent's switcher, because you yourself don't have pivoting off. Something else to note is that water type. Half these guys cannot kill water type, right? You got Tapu Fini. It can't do much, right? Lycanroc Dusk, Talonflame, Hitmontop, Send. They don't really like taking water type attacks. They get Skull Burn. over at that. Mega Medicham is an excellent breaker in this regard, but again, doesn't like taking skull. But what this team is really good at, it's got really good hazard game rather. So Feral Thorn, Lycanroc, Pals, and Drapion can set up toxic spikes. So really good in that regard. And then the removal option, him on top, Talonflame, maybe Tapu Fini. But nowadays you don't really want to run Defuck. It's just a waste of. Up to you, Ballhawk.
I think his first 3 picks work very well together. I think Tapu Fini helps out Mega Medicham a lot, being able to ward off any burns from Will-O-Wisp or Scald or otherwise. And I think Ferrothorn is a perfect switch-in for Tapu Fini, being able to take those electric and poison type attacks that Tapu Fini does not want to see. After that, it kind of just falls off for me. I like your point about the momentum or lack thereof with this team, and it's going to be. I wish he would have grabbed some form of webs, just because if Mega Medicham has webs, it makes it just 10 times more dangerous, in my opinion, just because it's going to be outspeeding everything at that point. I don't have too much else to add. It's very, very frail outside of those first few picks. Moving on to number 7, we have Blackoran. Blackoran's team looks pretty dangerous. It consists of Mega Lopunny, Aegislash, Tapu Lele, Rotom Wash, Arcanine, Flygon, Whimsicott, Budget Vullaby, Cradily, Garbodor, and Cryogonal. You got this team at number 3. You wanna elaborate?
Yeah, I just want to say you called it Budget Vullaby, but Budget Mana Book.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, most people look at this team as just like Psychic Terrain. We got like 3 priority users and for extra user, seems garbage. But if we can look past the Psychic Terrain issue, this team is so threatening, right? Mega Lopunny, Aegislash, they put in so much work. And then you got a solid defensive backbone in Rotom Wash, Arcanine, and even back there you got Garbodor, Cradily, Vullaby. They provide so much defensive power to your team that, offensively, this team is amazing. Defensively, this team is pretty good as well. Right? And you got very good pivoting options. U-turn from Lopunny, U-turn from Flygon, teleport from Arcanine, ball switch from Rotom. All these guys to get in, get out, go on to the next one. Right? It's so easy for this team to just kill someone. And if they don't like what they see, well, we'll just switch out and we'll just go next one. Right? Outside of that, this team is very, very fast paced. So if this team is gonna, if it's gonna win, it's probably gonna win within 30 turns. You're probably already gonna see half the team dead by like turn 15, just because of how scary these are, and just how this team really wants to 1-for-1. In that, if they 1-for-1, they usually come out ahead, just because of how powerful everybody else on this team is. All right. Anything else you want to add, Wallhawk?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't like the Psychic Terrain shenanigans on this team with the fake out, Shadow Sneak, all the priority on this team with the prankster stuff. I like Vullaby on here. Kind of adds to your point where he's got a lot of good switch-ins that have momentum to check its breakers' weaknesses. Vullaby is there very nicely for Aegislash and to an extent Tapu Lele. Yeah, very line them up and knock them dead-ish. They're able to do that. Should do pretty well. But yeah, I love the Mega Lopunny Aegislash combo. It's just that Tapu Lele, it's a little head scratchy for me, especially when they already have Whimsicott in the back as a fairy type. It's just a little redundant and not necessary. Moving on. Coming in at number 6, we've got Dasa, and their team has Mega Mawile, Hydreigon, Slowbro, Roserade, Comfey, Snorlax, Thundurus, Rhyperior, Passimian, Frostmoth, and Simisear. What do you got for us?
So one look, this team has awful hazard options. We got Mawile, and we got Rhyperior. That's it. You're never running rocks on Mega Mawile. If you do, probably a bad decision. Take it off. Right? And Rapier isn't going to come. And then after removal options, Hydreigon, Confe, Thundurus. I'm not sure. Yeah, Frostmoth. Frostmoth gets it. So only real defogger, Confe. Everybody else don't really want to run. Alright. Now, onto the positives of this team. Very, very powerful. Mega Mawile, Hydreigon, Thundurus. They hit very hard, and they also have good pivoting options between Hydreigon and Thundurus. So if they ever don't want to see what's in front of them, you just U-turn out, switch out, you bring in Mega Mawile, and then you just click button. Kill things. On top of that, you got a low Slowbro to set up Trick Room, so you can actually put in work with Mega Mawile. You outspeed everything. Right? Or even Snorlax. Snorlax is good here too. Rhyperior as well. They're very good Trick Room. But one thing this team is not very good at, very weak ground and ghost. Right? There's only 2 ground immunity. No resist. So if your Hydreigon is not there, if your Thundurus is not there, then Earthquake is free. Another thing I want to add is that these mons, they don't have much synergy with each other. None of them really complement the other one. They're just kind of good individual pieces. Well, that may not be bad. It's just that you're not going to get as much mileage out of all of them. Could. All right, Bahak, anything else?
I love the Trick Room aspect of this team and the fact that it's got 3 Trick Room abusers that don't need Trick Room to be dangerous. Rhyperior is bulky enough with its solid rock ability to take a lot of hits and just threaten with a knockout in return. Snorlax is the Curse Rust Talk set is very dangerous, and if it's able to set up, like if you're able to get rid of any fighting types on the other team or any ghost moves or types, if you're not running Darkest Lair yet, Snorlax can just win that way as well. So, and Mega Mawile is it forces so many 50-50 scenarios that if your opponent gets it wrong, it could be game over for them in an instant. So, I like the Trick Room aspect of the team that it doesn't rely on it, and I think it's got. I agree. A lot of the team members on here, they're very good individually. It'll be interesting to see how Dasa performs with them all. I'm looking forward to it. Moving on to number 5, we've got Choco Monkey. Choco has Garchomp, Heattrain, Primarina, Serena, Galvantula, Zapdos Galar, Florges, Quillfish, Zoroark, Rotom-Fan, and Ambipom. What's your opinion about this team?
Starting to notice a trend with these teams that they can't really deal with bulky waters. Right? Garchomp, Heatran, Primarina can't really kill it. Zapdos, yeah, I could do it, but doesn't want to get scalp burned. And then mostly just Serena and Galvantula to kill it. But Serena, it's not. You usually don't want to run offensive Serena if you can help it. Right? It's really good defensively. Something else to add about this team is that it's very poor defensively. There's only a Florges here to really cover up defensive side. Nothing else here can take multiple hits. So it's up to Florges to cover up that weakness, to Wish Pass, to just help everybody else on this team. Because if Heatran gets chipped, Primarina gets chipped, then you're losing some really crucial defensive aspects of your team that cannot be salvaged. Something else I want to add is that this team offensively, it looks really, really threatening, but there's not many true setup sweeper the team has. Right? I know Garchomp is there. I know perhaps there's bulk up Zapdos, but in most cases, these guys are not going to be running setups. They're not boosting their speed that much. They're not going to pose too much of a threat, which means that potential Scarfs and faster breakers can abuse the team really well. If somebody else on the other side sets up, the team cannot deal with it. It's just over that. Well,
I would have liked to see more hazard setters on the team to threaten Defiant Zapdos more. I think Defiant Zapdos is very scary for any team that has a lot of hazards where the opponent has to remove them in order to stand a chance with all the switches that they're going to need to do with this team. That was kind of a big miss for Choco Monkey, in my opinion. And the rest of the team just seems pretty frail in one way or another outside of the top 3 picks in Garchomp, Heatran, and Primarina. Floor just seems pretty redundant to me. I don't see the point of it after Primarina. I guess you can make the argument as another Defogger and Wish support. That's about it, in my opinion. I think this team kind of falls under the scenario or problem where they're probably going to bring the same 6, 7, or 8 team members each week and be fairly predictable that way, just because Zoroark, Rotom Fan, Ambipom, there's a lot of type overlaps where they don't need those when they've got things like Serena, Galvantula. It just seems they didn't do themselves any favors with their late round picks. And with that, I think we'll move on to number 4. Coming in at number 4, we've got Tooth. And again, I want to just kind of reiterate with these top teams, they're all good in their own right. We're all kind of splitting hairs and finding things to nitpick on them. So if we're sounding a little negative, don't don't be too taken aback. These teams are all pretty good at this point. So moving on, we got Zeraora, Gliscor, Necrozma, Vaporeon, Blacephalon, Chestnut, Weezing, Miltank, and Bisharp on Tooth's team. What do you think about this team, Sun?
So for starters, I think that Gliscor is really role locked onto this team. So what I mean by that is that it's really stuck being in the same role week after week. Why? Because it's one of the 2 defoggers on this team and one of the 4 stealth rockers. But Bisharp is not, you're not setting him. Right? So it's usually going to run defog. And Gliscor with defog is not a good Gliscor, right? You want to run Roost, you want Facade, you want Swords, Earth, Tech, Sub, Toxic, right? But if you're running defog every week, then you're essentially running a 3-move Gliscor. So it's not going to be that good, not going to be as effective as it could be. So it's not going to offer full potential. But another look at this team, it's got really good offensive pieces. Zeraora, Blacephalon, very good at job. They break holes, but these are basically the only 2 breakers on this team. We got Vaporeon, Chestnut, Weezing, Miltank. They can't really dent the team too much. Even Necrozma, if you're bringing a bulky Necrozma with Stealth Rock, I don't think it's going to do much for the team. So, breaking-wise, this team might struggle a lot. It's like ground type, or even just other bulky normal types, right? Blacephalon can't really kill normal types, and Zeraora has to rely on close combat, and if you don't kill in one shot, kill you back. Very linear, so something to watch out for. Bob?
I would agree that I think the hazard removal game is probably the weakest part on this team. It's very solid. They did a good job at providing a lot of good things that depend on one another with a limited team in 9 Pokemon. We had the stipulation where they had to draft 9 to 11 Pokemon, so some coaches opted to draft the bare minimum. I will say that I like the Vaporeon pick a lot with Gliscor and Blacephalon. I think Vaporeon is a glue that kind of holds this team together in a sense. But outside of that, I think the team is very taunt spam weak. A lot of things on this team want to use something other than just spamming attacks, and I think taunt plus a setup move is going to be it's going to spell a lot of trouble for this team. So they're very I don't have too much else to add there. I can see this team making a deep run just because of the solid defensive backbone on this team, being able to check each other's weaknesses quite well. But outside of that, the momentum is kind of null outside of Vaporeon and Zeraora, just because you're not going to really have room for U-turn on Gliscor every week. So With that, moving on to the top 3. Coming at 3, we've got Alex himself. And too bad he wasn't able to stay on the call to talk about his team in person. But it's definitely got a threatening team for sure. He has Zygarde, Corviknight, Victini, Mega Venusaur, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Umbreon, Raikou, Aromatisse, Smeargle, and Carkol. You both ranked him at 4, so why don't you tell us why, Sun?
I think this team, both offensively, defensively, are really, really solid. Like, I think this is the most well-rounded team out of everybody here, right? You got Zygarde, you got Victini, you got Urshifu, Raikou. They're killing things, right? You got Corviknight on the other hand, Mega Venusaur, Umbreon, Aromatisse. Great tanks. They can sponge hits, and they can even, Corviknight U-turns out, Umbreon baton passes, and Venusaur just sits there and just leech seeds. But the one thing I don't like about this team is that, again, no hazard. Smeargle is there, I guess. Carkol is there, but nobody can really set up rock effectively. You're not going to be bringing Smeargle most of the times. And if you are, you're playing a 5v6 because it's a suicide lead. You're not going to do much after it's getting got off either rocks, webs, spikes, whatever. And Carkol is not a real monster. It's a fodder, right? Now, onto defaulting options, it's just Corviknight. That's it. And if you want to count, Smeargle, Carkol, but we're discounting those too. So if Corviknight is running default every single week, that means you can't make the most out of the other Corviknight sets. Can't bulk up, can't run Iron Defense. You're stuck using default and Roost every single week. That leaves you with 2 moves, and that's not ideal on a Corviknight. You want to make the most out of your mons. You can't do that with this team. Another thing I want to add is that this team, the speed, it's 115 for the fastest. It's okay, but it's not great, right? You're gonna get outsped by a lot of other mons, and you're simply not gonna have answers for most of them. You're probably gonna be running Scarf Victini a lot of times, and if you are running Scarf Victini, then hazards hurt this team even more. Most of these guys are grounded as well. Victini, Mega Venusaur, they don't like taking hazards. Their longevity is hindered a lot by opposing hazards, which is why Corviknight is so roll-locked again into being a D.
Yeah, I would agree that the last 2 picks are kind of just, I might as well just forget that they're, especially when you got Smeargle. You got Rapid Spin and Carkol, but again, if you're bringing Smeargle and Carkol each game, you're really hurting yourself just because a lot of times you're going to bring Smeargle for some type of hazard setup and just die. And relying on Corviknight to default, it's like, why do you have Smeargle there in the first place then? Other than that, everything else checks itself really well. I think he's going to be caught, trying to bring the same 6, 7 each week. And I think that's going to get him in a lot of trouble just being predictable. But again, those 6 to 7 that he's bringing each week are all very strong in their own right. And so I think he's got decent speed tier spacing. But again, to your point, being tapped out at 115 is not necessarily ideal. With that, we'll move on to number 2. And here we have yours truly. My team consists of Mega Diancie, Latios, Skarmory, Darmanitan, Milotic, Chansey, Vikavolt, Roselia, Cofagrigus, Sandslash, and Liepard. Why don't you rip me a new one, Sun?
I'll actually let you take this first. I want to see what you have to say first.
So I had the 4th pick overall, and I saw Mega Diancie there. I haven't used it before, so I just, gut jerk reaction. I took it, and initially I wanted to get Zygarde and Corviknight on the rebound, but Alex, as you saw, he had the wheel on the other end, and he took him. So I opted to get Latios and Skarmory. I think they complement each other quite well. I think it's a good defensive backbone. As I was building this, I didn't necessarily intend for it to be this way, but I got a lot of hazards here, and I wanted to get to fit Passimian on here at the end. It just didn't work out points-wise. Reason being is that I think this team has a lot of pressure on the team with hazards, and it forces them to remove spikes, T-spikes, rocks, webs, whatever, and being able to bring in a competitive or defiant user just really hurts them that much more. That it forces them to choose their poison, whether they want to remove the hazards or deal with a +2 special attack or physical attack mon sitting in front of them to just KO something next. I think this team has a lot of good pivoting options, and I don't know. It just looks it looks fun. I think it's going to be oriented a lot to wearing the team down so something can just clean things up week in and week out, whether it's Mega DNC, Latios, or Darmanitan, what have you. So, what do you think?
I think, again, this team has a plethora of hazard options, which is really good, especially when you have, DNC, Latios, Darmanitan. They want to kill, right? So hazards help them a lot. But on the other spectrum, this team is so weak to knock off. Discounting the 2 Evili users, we got Latios, we got Cofagrigus, both weak to knock off. Darm and Melodic. Melodic doesn't want to take a knockoff until it's used as Flame Ward. But before that point, if you get your Flame Ward knocked off, you don't have an ability for the rest of the game. You don't have an item for the rest of the game. Right? Darm usually wants to keep his item, and it's so frail, so it's not going to take too many hits anyways. Vikavolt, Roselia, Sensash, they don't appreciate having their items knocked off. Something else I want to add is that this is like one of the few teams that I've seen that's actually weak to poison. Right? We got a Starmie right there, and we got a Cofagrigus. And those are only 2 ways that are only 2 monsters that are not neutral or weak to poison. That's not a very common weakness, but it's still something to look out for, right? Because Mega Beedrill, Gengar, or even opposing Crobat, Roserade, like their poison moves are gonna stink because there's no resist or very limited resist to them. Right, but again, as you mentioned, very offensive, good defensively too. So it's hard to break, hard to switch in. It's got decent momentum. You got flip turn, you got U-turn, teleport, switch, and it's got a Roselia. What more can I say?
Last season's Ultras Division GOAT. Yeah, good points. Yeah, it should be fun. Moving on now to the top squad on our PRs for the Articuno division. Coming in at number 1, we've got Berry Fairy. Berry Fairy's team is very scary. I don't know how we let him build this team. He's got Urshifu Single Strike, Zapdos, Spectrier with the Toxapex, Mega Altaria, Registeel, Cinderace, Lickitung, Sandaconda, and Gourgeist. What do you think?
I think this team thrives offensively, right? Urshifu, Spectrier, Cinderace, they host. They're gonna, make teams think twice about, double switching because Shifu, you're not gonna switch into a Cinderace, even though it doesn't have Libero. Pyro Ball's still the exact same with Blaze as Libero.
Still got solid coverage.
Exactly, and you got momentum. You got U-turn. Spectre is there. Yeah, it's got very limited options with what it can do, but one of the best ways to deal with Spectre answers is the fighting type. You not only kill the ghost type or the dark types, you also kill the normal types. And Urshifu is one of the best fighting types in this format. It's gonna kill everything that comes in. The only thing it doesn't like are fairies. And what do we have for fairy types? No, we got 2 defensive checks to the fairies. We got a Toxapex and we got Registeel. They're excellent at what they're doing. Toxapex is the unkillable water type. Right? Registeel sits there, gets up rocks, body presses, curse, iron defense, thunder wave, toxic, just annoy the other guy. You have a Zapdos, spread status, discharge, toxic, thunder wave. All of this is also helping Spectre, taxing everything. Toxapex is setting up toxic spikes. Spectre gets to use 130 pace power hex. It's killing everything in it. And Mega Altaria is here. Finish. You can need Dragon Dance. Run special set. You can even run Cotton Guard. There's so many things that Altaria can do that's just supported by everything else here. Now, one thing I do want to note is that the team is very weak status. If you get Toxic, you get Skullburn. Many of these mons, their effectiveness basically gets limited in half. Which is why, Mega Altaria, Lickitung, they're both great heal bell for. So if you can somehow preserve your mons, you can heal bell up and try again later. The same, in my opinion, it's just really good synergistically, and you have really good threat. Anything I want to add, Bob?
Yeah, I want to echo the synergy on this team. I think it just plays perfectly into Spectrier and Urshifu in the sense that he's got static, Zapdos, pressuring with discharge. I mean, you're gonna get probably a paralysis with that. Each game on average, you got spikes from Toxapex, you got Toxic Thunderwave from Registeel, you got Glare from Sandaconda, Toxic from Gourgeist. These things just they toxic they status the other team, and then late game Spectrier comes in and punches holes and either sweeps that way, or the Urshifu can come in later and just clean up whatever's left. This team is it's so scary to prep for. Like, you're gonna need to bring taunt, but then you got things that are just gonna switch in on a taunt and get off a free shot, and it's gonna be easy for this team to wear opponents down, I think. So it's gonna be very, very interesting to see how people prepare for this team and how the battles unfold, just because of the sheer synergy and power of this team. And it's just each turn is going to be like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to risk losing 50% on one of my teammates, or do I want to just sack this mon in the effort to get some chip on the opponent? So with that, that'll do it for the Articuno division power rankings post draft, post grace period. Moves maybe for week 1. So congrats to Berry Fairy on getting our top spot. And thanks for tuning in, guys. I expect the Moltres and Lugia division PRs to be recorded here soon and released as well. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.